Hi, I'm Mike Byron, CEO and founder of MyBizMeNow. Welcome to the Ignite Leadership Series. Okay, this is Mike Byron. I'm here with my brother Matt for our next MyBizMeNow Leadership Series called Ignite. And Matt, I'd like to introduce you. And why don't you say a few words about who you are and what you do?
Okay, I am Matt Byron, Michael Byron's illustrious older brother.
All right.
I am the owner of a holding company called Greenwave Creative, and Greenwave Creative has interests in several other businesses, which are Blue Tree Enterprises, Evolution Art Incorporated, and a small bit of interest in Blockstar Evolution. All three of the businesses are based in the art and entertainment industry.
Cool. We talked a little bit before the interview about some areas that you kind of felt strongly about and you wanted to get across today. What's the wheel of revenue thing? You want to talk
The
about that
revenue
for a minute?
wheel. Sure, we can talk about the
That's
revenue
sort
wheel.
of an undercapitalization
Well,
thing.
so every business has a wheel that is their revenue. That is revenue generates revenue coming in is what turns the wheel, and so the trick to surviving incidents like COVID is how does that wheel keep turning when you have gaps in that revenue? So we've experienced a situation where right now our revenue fall off from March and April, which went from X to zero. We're now having to deal with that gap in the revenue hitting
catching
our stream now. And so how do you keep that big wheel moving forward if all you have is the big wheel turning? So what we have done is we have divisions of the company which are much smaller wheels that keep spinning. And so if you keep half of those wheels still spinning, it will still keep the big wheel turning enough to survive that gap in the big revenue stream.
Okay.
So diversification in where our revenue comes from. So we are based in the hospitality industry. We create art for hotels and casinos all over the country. So COVID had a massive hit on that industry, and basically all revenue stopped.
Yeah.
So we have a painting business and a chroming business. So that small revenue wheel kept turning. We have a contracting business. That wheel definitely kept turning.
That's Blue Tree?
That's Evolution Carpentry.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And so, and black and blue chroming is our painting and chroming business. So some of those smaller revenue wheels kept spinning fast enough that it kept the big wheel turning just enough. So we're going to survive this big gap in our big revenue, which is the art revenue. So we're going to be able to continue, and it's taken a little bit of creative financing, and the fact that we're a startup company gave us some challenges with, just normal bank financing, but we've worked our way through it.
Did you end up with any bank financing?
Just a small line of credit through Wells Fargo,
Right.
but because we're a startup, and we had only started in February of this year,
Right.
it precluded us from any of the PPP money or any of the disaster relief loans. So the things that
Yeah, I
kept
ran into the same situation.
Yeah, and that's some of the government planning where startup businesses, and we're a very viable startup business. We've already generating significant revenue, but that didn't help us as a startup. And we explored avenues through commercial lending banks with SBA loans, and none of those, because we were a startup. It precluded us from all of that.
You mentioned before that there were some banks that that you thought might work out, but it really ended up not.
Well, like Wells Fargo, because we're a startup and because
There's such a big.
their risk reward factor for the way that they lend, they're not taking any risk
They're not
on lending,
incentivized to do
especially
that,
now
right.
where businesses are so shaky because of all the fallout from COVID.
How about the impact on your suppliers, the people that you contract through? Did you end up with issues around that, like not being able to get work done because of the impacts it had on?
Not so much
Other
with
folks?
supplies and materials, because when pretty much all work came to a grinding halt in the hospitality industry, all these suppliers, weren't selling supplies, so we didn't have that issue as far as us being able to still produce work and have the materials required to produce that work. Some of our vendors, we're fortunate that a lot of the vendors that we use on some of these bigger art projects are construction-based companies, metal
So they were
fabrication
considered
companies
essential.
and painting companies, and
Right.
so they were still vibrant. The construction industry suffered the least, I think, of any of the industries.
Now, this revenue stream that you diversified, did you do that knowing that there
No,
were
no, it
risks
was
that
just-
you just like
it's-
a risk planning thing?
No,
it was more
it's-
organic.
It was more organic. It's the way that as before Blue Tree became Evolution Art, I had just done that because the art wasn't generating enough revenue when we were a smaller company to sustain the company year round. So we would,
It
we
was
would have
intuitive.
contracting work that would, so I always had a general contracting business that I was part of that would generate enough revenue that could sustain everything. And the art became kind of like in addition to that. And then as Evolution, we flipped it. So we made art the main focus and devoted all of our marketing energies and dollars to promoting us as an art company. And it really started to take off. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so it was like the best business in the worst, or the worst business in the best time, or the worst business in the worst time. So it really, we felt it.
Okay, Matt. So thank you for that. I'd like to kind of change the subject a little bit.
Okay.
Kind of related is influences.
Influences. That's a great place to be in because I've had some pretty significant influences. I think the first is an influence that's been huge for both of us, and that would be our parents.
Yeah.
Our parents, coming from South Boston, mom as a kid, and then we moved to the Irish Riviera, which was the South Shore of Boston, and that real hardcore Irish work ethic.
Yeah.
Our parents being the children of Depression era parents, where you didn't waste anything. What was the thing Grandma used to always say to us? Kids are starving in India, so eat all your food.
Yeah, right.
And so we grew up very much with that as our driving
She had
work
people
ethic.
coming up to her doorstep selling twine.
Yeah.
during the
Well,
Depression.
and we're only a generation removed from the INA signs in the window. Irish need not apply.
Right.
So that was real for us, and the discrimination against Irish people that were immigrants. Our great grandparents suffered through that and suffered through the Depression, and so we're like the grandchildren of that era of people. So we had a different kind of work ethic instilled in us than maybe some kids nowadays do.
I've heard them referred to as the Great Generation.
Yeah, the greatest generation. Yep.
The greatest generation. Yeah.
But influences. So our dad, Paul Byron, is an amazing human, but he did some really important things. So one of the things when he became the head basketball coach at Abington High School, he changed the whole branding of our school and changed it from the Mohicans, which was a throwback to the Mohawk Indian tribe, to Green Wave. Hence the name of my holding company, Green Wave Creatives.
I know that came from him.
Yeah, Dad created that whole paradigm shift in our branding of a school and the school's sports. And so we became the Abington Green Wave. And that's been and the way he did that and how successful it was, and that it's still to this day, what the school calls itself, to me, is like a really successful branding effort
Yeah.
that has lasted 30, 40
Never thought
years.
of it like that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's what it was. So Dad had a real keen eye for that. And then, of course, the basketball school, his basketball camp that started off up in a little college in New Hampshire that ran 1 week out of the summer. And by the time we were in college, it was running 6 weeks during almost the whole summertime, and had 40 employees and ran out of Mass Maritime Academy.
You
So
had some great leaders come through for that, didn't we?
great leaders. We
Guest
Bill
lecturer.
Calhoun from Boston College, Carl Fogel from Northeastern. I mean, Rick
Yeah, the guy from
Pitino.
BU, right? Yeah,
Right. So we had those kind of influences on us as kids, and that wasn't lost on me. And then, Dad had, I call them the great Byronisms, but Dad had some couple of really important philosophies that stuck with me. And the first one was to dream big and plan small. And that's always stuck with me. So, and as well as I do as a kid, Mom was always like, listen, you're not going to be the next Mick Jagger. So find something
More
worthwhile doing.
Pragmatic.
Right. But I was always dreaming that I was going to be bigger than Mick Jagger.
Meanwhile, she was into the women's rights. And
Right, right. And
70s and all that.
she's an amazing human on her own,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And had her own thing. She went back to college and became a teacher and did all her stuff.
Yeah.
But Dad's thing about dream big and plan small always stuck with me.
How have you applied that?
As anybody
small.
that knows me, I have this dream of achieving this great thing that I will never die. I will never be able to completely accomplish. But my greatest comfort in life is knowing that I will absolutely die trying.
Yeah.
Whether I'm 60 or whether I'm 95 or 106, I will never get there. But that's okay. I'm good with that. But that comes from Dad's dream big, but you got to plan small. Like,
Yeah, what does that mean?
well, you got to be able to pay the bills, right? You got to be able to pay your employees. You got to be able to pay for your rent. So
You don't want to be too heavenly minded to be of any earthly good.
right. So yeah, you want to look at the clouds, but you have to absolutely pay attention to what's going on tomorrow and next week and next month.
Yeah.
So plan for the small things and make sure that those are planned for and taken care of. And that's what gives you the ability to dream big.
Right,
And if you
right.
don't do the two together, they're absolutely critical to each other.
So it's really keeping tabs of the day-to-day business.
But being able to plan long range. And if you don't dream big, you'll never be big.
Right.
And
right.
at
So-
this point, for me, it's all about legacy. It's, my oldest son, Connor, is a manager in my company. My grandchildren, my daughter, Yuri, how do we provide legacy for them? What I'm trying to create is got to live past me. It's got to be able to live without me. So that's another part of the dream big, but how do you plan for that to happen successfully? So
Kinda
it's
How do
training.
you work yourself out of a job?
Yeah,
type of
you got to
thing.
work yourself out of a job, but it's training. Given Chris Kania, one of my best employees, my number one guy, how do I give him enough skills that if something happened to me tomorrow, that they could still manage to run the company without me? And having people like Brian Shard, our CFO, was part of this thing. It's hugely important to that success that we can still survive without me. Right. So that's part of the whole, plan small, dream big. Dad had another great Byronism. He said, there are three kinds of people in this world. He said, small minds talk about people. Average minds talk about things. Great minds talk about ideas. So the only time you ever heard Albert Einstein talking about other people was in praise of those other people, in amazement of how important the things that these other people thought about or accomplished were. So to talk about other people in praise or in, admiration is admirable in itself. And that's paying acknowledgement to people that are smarter than you. And then Dad had a third one. I forgot about it until just now. And this was the most important one. He says, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong
Something's
room.
wrong, yeah.
So run.
Right.
And that to me, so I am blessed and fortunate beyond all measure to be the dumbest guy in most of the rooms I walk in now.
I feel the same way.
right. So how cool is that?
Couple dummies
right.
there.
And I know
You
that.
know, how does that qualify in this room? There's only two of us.
Well, I keep telling people you're my older brother.
Yeah, well, I can pass, unfortunately. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because, I'm going for the Keith Richards look, while you're going for the Brian Simmons or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, just
Life balance.
the thing
and
that
taking care of
I
yourself.
think has attracted all these great minds to my endeavor is my passion. So I really believe in what I'm doing, and
But
I
you
believe
turned
in
into
the
a pumpkin at 3, right?
yeah, well, absolutely. Well, I
So-
say 3, but it usually takes till
End of the
5.
day.
But well, and that's the other thing is the work-life balance and being able to stop working, because I don't feel like I ever am at work. My whole life is what I do. But if I
Yeah.
don't find some way to delineate between that work-life balance, I would just be completely consumed and not do anything but work all the time. And then that's no life.
And you bring your passion to your leisure activities as
Yeah,
well.
well,
You don't
from-
just kick back and watch a football game. Or
No, I'm in it. Like I play sports. I'm still an active athlete. I play competitive basketball a couple nights a week. I run a couple nights a week. I golf, not real well, but better than some people I know.
Could you beat Donald Trump?
Yeah,
Let's not go there.
Yeah. Yes, I would. Yeah, that would be a fun thing to accomplish. But yeah, so that same passion that I have about what I do for a living and the people that are around me do for a living, I bring to what I do for leisure time. So
I'd kind of say flip it the other way around and say, the passion you bring to your leisure time just
I bring to my
being your
shows up
work to work.
Yeah, that may. I mean, that's a better view from you because I can only see me from my view. But yeah, I think that's probably a valid statement.
Yeah, definitely. It's contagious as well, I think, because and it's really, I think there's some importance there to having some authenticity, some street cred, and leading by example. I think is incredibly important.
That's the thing that I feel strongest about, and that I'm surrounded by some really talented people. I've been fortunate to bring a Chris Kane in, or my son Connor in, or some Corey who's our chroming guy, or any of the people, the artisans. Ovi, Ovi's this
Great
amazing
artist.
world-renowned sculptor, and he's been working with me for 8 years. So I'm really fortunate to be surrounded by this talent. But I can also, any of the work that I have anybody do, I've done. And I've done well, and I've made a living at doing any of those particular things. So when I collaborate with my team, everybody brings something important to the table, but I'm not just an administrator. I spent years with nail bags on and nail
Right.
guns in hand and walking top plate on houses. And so when I bring something to the table, I spent 10 years doing that. And so that means something to the people that I have on the team.
Let's talk about dealing with adversity and some setbacks in your life and resiliency and how you maintain resiliency through some of those things.
Well, the adversity part is, anybody that knows me, it's been obvious. I was an addict from the time I was probably 12 years old in full-blown active addiction. And that took me to all kinds of bad places for a long period of time. And I know for mom and dad, it was terrifying. I know for you, as my brother, it was terrifying. But now in my 13th year of sobriety, I've made it past that 1 year mark, which is where most people fail.
Yeah,
And then the 5 year mark, when you feel comfortable enough, like you've got 5 years under your belt. A lot of people slip there. Then the 10-year mark is what really train wrecks, people. And that's the most devastating train wreck because you get 10 years, a decade, and you're on just straight cruise control. But I don't allow myself that luxury.
A lot of that comes down to who you surround yourself with, too, as well, right?
All about who you surround yourself with. But it's also, being honest with yourself. I'm still an addict. I will always be an addict. I'm only one slip away from being full-blown back to being that crazy madman with the needle in my arm, just tearing stuff up and just being out of control. So, and I never let that thought get too many seconds away from reality.
So that brought you down a pretty dark path. How did you come back from that? And, you started off with the handyman business when you sort of came back around.
Yeah. So, my dream when I was on vacation was to start a business because nobody would hire me because of all these, convictions that I had. And so, I started off as a handyman and then got denied by the contractors board for a contractor's license. Granted, they had valid reasons to deny me back then.
Yeah.
So I had to find a way forward. And the way forward was for Connor and I to just start doing handyman work.
And that was touch and go for a while, wasn't
Yeah, it was touch and go. And I mean, when we got the first shop, we went from a 10 by 20 storage unit. And after a while, you can't keep stealing power from the office to cut these boards with. So we actually...
What was going on? All right.
Yeah. And, first, we started in the driveway of our apartment. And that was that lasted for about a week before all the neighbors started complaining. We got a table saw set up there at 10 o'clock at night. Feel like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But, we, coming from where I came from, the experiences that I had on vacation to, my view of like what's risky may be skewed a little bit because I've actually been to the bottom that you can go to. You can't go any lower besides being dead. So to come from there my view was always like, well, what's the worst that can happen? I've already
That's a great perspective. Not everybody gets that.
no, and so I look at it as I'm the luckiest guy on the planet because I actually get to live through the worst, the absolute. You can't be any lower, and having survived that, and it wasn't just a minute; it was a minute, and so having
Yeah.
survived that for a long period of time, anything out here is gravy. I mean, it's just like so the stuff that most people like lose sleep over. I sleep was like with the air on 70 and no sheets.
And the TV going.
Yeah, yeah, right. Like super cool, no problems at all. So, that maybe changes my view of what's scary, what's important, what's like, and I know, that whole risk reward factor. And granted, I make people nervous at times, and I get that. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but people that know the difference, who are now my business partners, and they understand that, this is all I have. I've gone all in on this with every penny from day one till now. I still have every penny invested in all my businesses.
Right.
So, but what's the worst that can happen? Everything
So
fails. Well,
You
I
get
start
a
over
high
again.
tolerance for risk. I think that makes you really well suited in your role as an entrepreneur.
Well, and I have a zero tolerance for failure.
Well, so let's talk about that for a second. So a lot of times, people that are high achievers set really high standards for themselves, and they can be their own worst critic.
I am
Do
absolutely.
you go through that? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think some people look at what I've achieved to this point like, oh my God, you're such a success. I'm like, what are you talking about? My company's not worth $500 million or it's not worth $1 billion. When I get there, then maybe I'll feel like, okay, now I've really created legacy. I've created something that can absolutely, unequivocally last without me and well beyond
Me
my
too. It's called
grandchildren.
debt.
Yeah, not 500 million in debt, but like, but so that's the thing that I'm trying to achieve at this point is, it can't happen with just one business. It's a multitude of enterprises across a broad spectrum of industries that will allow that to happen. And so I've got different stuff and different fires all the time. At this point, the biggest risk, the biggest thing for me is the demands on my time.
Do you? Yeah. Okay. So that's a good place to go right there because, I'm just a self-appointed CEO with no direct reports, and so that makes my life
Right.
pretty
And
busy.
I am no longer that. I am a part of a corporation that has a board of directors, has shareholders, and so the level of accountability that I'm held to now compared to even a year ago is like night and day.
And I'm just a little guy, but I can still go to the end of the day and not have everything done. It's like
You
How
never
do
get it. You never get it all done.
how do you live? You just kind of live with that level.
Well, back when I was a stockbroker back in the '80s, I went to Tom Hopkins' seminar, and one of the things that Tom Hopkins really pushed was that a list of things to do. So you'll see the first thing I do before I leave every day is I go through the list from the day before, and then whatever's left on that list becomes the first items on the next day's list to accomplish.
and is your list? You're putting a lot of stuff in Google Calendar, aren't you?
Google Calendar is a great place, but no, I actually I have a notepad on my desk.
Right.
And I save those notepads in chronological order. And every quarter I go and I review the notes and if stuff that's important that I, won't necessarily get to, sometimes I'll highlight stuff. So when I review the notes, I see the highlighted thing and I'll be, oh, that was something I wanted to pay attention to. Did I? Is it important? Is it something I should pay attention to now?
Right.
So it's just, but the review process is important and making the time for that review is important. So that's just another tool that I found is very valuable.
How do you? What's the criteria you use for things that are bubbling up that you actually pay attention to? Because there's a lot of stuff going on out there, and you can't solve it all. So
Does it make money?
does it make money?
So that goes back to the whole revenue wheel thing, right?
So you're really focused on selling and.
Well, yeah, I have
bringing
to
in
be. I mean,
revenue.
so one of the fundamental changes in the view of what I do, and again, Brian Shard was a huge person to make me see this fundamental shift, is that Evolution Art is not an art company. It's a sales company.
Yeah, that's a twist.
Huge, and I had never viewed, and my role really as CEO is not creating art. I have a team that creates the art. My role as CEO is to sell the company's ability to create art.
And
So I'm really a salesman now, and that's my primary function. So,
so
all
you
the
set
travel,
the vision, you've got a strategy in place,
yeah, the
that
company,
needs to run.
right, and the company does run, and we've been doing this for 8 years
'Cause it's a
successfully.
shared vision.
We've kind of created the industry too, because we're such a unique force in the hospitality industry. Nobody does everything that we do. There's other companies that do some of what we do, but we're the
Piece
first
of it,
company that has put it all under one roof.
Cool.
So what my role is now is to go out and sell that.
Matt, I wanted to talk a little bit about your experience with investors and how you got the funding to begin with, because banks really, as we talked about, don't want to touch small business with a 10-foot pole. So it really comes down to attracting investors and being out there and being involved and engaged in what's going
Yeah,
on in the business community.
Yeah, it's a great topic. So I had gotten Blue Tree to a certain point of growth, and we had started to bog down. And we needed some capital to be able to find new premises, to be able to buy some of the bigger equipment that we needed to move our ability to fabricate to a whole new level. And in doing that, I had to find some money, because,
Did the money find you, or did you find the money?
well, in my search for the money, it found me.
Okay, there you go.
So it was kind of a cool process. So I had no idea about angel investors or venture capital groups or those mid-level investors that will invest from 500 to $1 million. Or I had no idea about any of it. And so in my search for money, Brian Shard helping me with that search and helping me. I had no idea what a pitch deck was. I had no idea. I had a business
You've
plan,
come a long way.
yeah, but my business plan was, let's make some money. I make something, I sell it, I make money. That was my business plan.
Yeah.
But there's all these much bigger things that go on when your business grows, and these are things that
It's a good problem to have.
yeah, but there's things that really create value. So one of the things, obviously, does your business make money? And so having good bookkeeping, using QuickBooks, and having, real reporting on that,
Basic
having
blocking and tackling.
having job costing. So does, your company's making money, but where is that money being made at? Which division of the company is making the most money or making not enough money?
Yeah, great.
So
Yeah.
doing job costing per jobs was a huge thing that I wasn't doing and that we needed to do. So all of those things, and being able to show that, yes, we were at 7% net. Well, that was what an investor looked at and said, oh, wow, this company is actually, like, its net is 7%. That's a solid number. That's a number that and so I could open my books up to an investment group and say, here's the last 7 years of revenue stream.
Plus,
This is how I manage the money.
okay.
And that's, so there's certain things
So
that,
you really need to be in a position where you don't have skeletons in the closet and you're doing things
or,
the right way.
I had skeletons in the closet. I had missed a quarterly payroll tax payment,
Right.
and it was a big one. But
So
how
being
I managed,
honest about that.
being honest about it, and being honest with the IRS about it. And I told the IRS guy, I said, listen, I'm not mad at you. It's my mistake. I just want to figure out how to fix it, pay what I owe, and not have it put my company out of business.
Right.
And
So
he was
having all
shocked.
that.
He was shocked. And he's still my friend. He still calls me every quarter just to say, hi, how you doing?
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean,
That's-
and this is an IRS agent,
Yeah, how often does that happen?
Right. But because I was transparent with them and I was honest about it, listen, it was my mistake.
How has it impacted your freedom to start new ventures with having a board oversight dimension involved?
Actually, it's been great because
So it doesn't hem you in.
it doesn't, no, but they forced me to focus on what's important to my company and to the board and to the investors. But by closing my focus, it doesn't take that much time to drill down on that stuff. And by setting up the right systems with accounting systems, with information management systems, all that kind of stuff, it generates the information that they want to see automatically.
And some of that came from their funding. And
Yes, from their
coaching
funding, and allowed me the ability to, actually act as a real CEO and to look at, okay, what does my company need to move to the next level? Information management has been a huge issue, solving that. But that in and of itself, having a robust, easily accessible information management system, easily controllable information management system, that adds huge value to the company. So for the board to look at that and say, okay, this is an endeavor, this is something that's really valuable, let's put some money into that and make that happen.
You know, I've got the alternative board folks coming.
Patrick, Kevin,
Yeah,
the alternative board, they have been absolutely...
that was sort of your warm-up for having a real board of directors. Right?
Yeah, well, but it was absolutely instrumental because having an outside group of people look at my business, you know, I have a lawyer, I have a judge, I have an electrician, I have a metal fabrication guy, I have an accountant, and all these outside people looking at your business with fresh set of eyes and helping you solve problems that you have, it was huge. They're the ones that got me to see that my company was actually 5 different divisions, all jumbled up into one thing.
I remember that moment. Yeah.
And then it was an epiphany. So once I broke that out and I said, okay, well, we actually have 5 different ways of generating revenue. Let's separate those so we can manage each one of those as its own entity to the whole. It changed everything.
What about SCORE and the Chamber of Commerce? What's your?
Well, without SCORE, I wouldn't be anywhere. So
SCORE's in a lot of different states.
I went
right?
to them first thing, said, listen, I'm a carpenter. I want to start a business. How do I do it? So they're the ones that set me up, showed me how to start an LLC, showed me how to set up a QuickBooks accounting. They actually referred me to an accountant, Hank Pinto. You know,
So is that part of the Small Business
Yep, it's part of the SBA.
Association?
And the SCORE is the Service Corps of Retired Executives. And
And they're all over, right?
They're all over. They're every city in the country.
So would you recommend that as a first
Absolutely.
stop for somebody
For
starting a business?
a new entrepreneur or somebody starting a business, go to SCORE. They give you all of the standardized protocols for how to start a business, whether you should have a corporation or an LLC or a sole proprietor. What kind of bookkeeping systems do you have to have set up? What kind of accounting what reporting are you required to do? All of the stuff that your average citizen isn't going to know how to do, they give you a roadmap. It's called the Roadmap for Success. I mean, it's absolutely fundamental place to start a business.
It's a really good place to sort of get you up and going.
Yep. And it connects you to the business community.
Yeah, and so we have a pretty vibrant business community here. And we also have, the Chamber of Commerce folks involved.
Chamber of
What role
Commerce.
do they play?
The Henderson Chamber of Commerce has been a huge proponent of us in exposing us to other businesses because essentially as an art fabrication company, we're considered a manufacturing business.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been to some group meetings where it was all these huge, manufacturing companies from Henderson. And some of them are huge, Extreme Manufacturing, or there's a new computer company coming in. These are big, 200, 300, 500 employee companies, but we're still all manufacturing concerns. And they were really interested to learn about, because I manufactured such a unique thing, what my challenges were as a manufacturing company. So the Chamber of Commerce connecting you with other businesses that are the same, but other businesses that are different too, has been a great thing.
Now, you've also been a part of, you've built relationships with the city. What was the significance of that? How did you go about doing that? What types of relationships are important to build with the city in your situation?
So my relationships with the city have been absolutely critical to our success as the new endeavor. So I've always been I made a member of the City of Henderson's Arts and Cultural Council board, which we're establishing how art, culture, and the creative economy will exist in the city of Henderson and how it will be promoted and what it will look like. And being part of that has exposed me to other city people, the mayor, redevelopment, all the different departments of the city that I normally wouldn't have met in my role as a contractor. It's been a huge, huge plus.
And you sort of got to stay active in all that.
Yeah, I do. I'm on a board member that we meet once a month, and we're creating how art, culture, and the creative economy exist in the city.
Is there anything else we haven't talked about that you want to get across today? And think about, entrepreneurs that are new in this space, people that are displaced and working, trying to get a job started working from home. What type of advice do you have for the small business owner that's just getting started?
Follow your passion.
Yeah.
What is it that you're passionate about? And then do the research.
Because it's not easy, right?
No,
You gotta
it's
be
not
passionate
easy. If
about
it was easy, everybody would be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But the payoff is huge.
So you said follow your passion. and
Follow
what?
your passion, do the research, find out if what you're passionate about can make you money and how you make money doing what you love.
I got to figure that one out. I'm spending a lot of money. I guess that officially makes me a business.
Well,
but
that's part of the whole process.
Yeah.
You got to spend it to
right
make
now,
it.
my legacy is debt, like we said. But cool. Is there anything else you wanted to get to come across during the interview?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm sure that you'll edit large portions of this. but
Most of it.
That's the story of my life. No, I think we've covered all the things that I'd like to see covered.
Well, like Click and Clack, the car guys
Yeah.
from NPR. I'm Mike Byron, and this is the Ignite Leadership Series. Thank you for watching. More content's on the way, so stay tuned for future episodes.